Hi everyone, welcome to our planetarium. I know some of you have been here before, some of you have not, so welcome to our dome. It's truly my favorite place on campus to be at because it's filled with so many cool possibilities, so many cool things that you can do in the planetarium. And so the main purpose of our planetarium, the main purpose of these tools is to learn how to stargaze and is to really learn to appreciate the night sky in an impressive new way. But as you can see above us right now, there is no night sky out right now. We're just looking at a daytime sky. It's a pretty nice day with no atmosphere, just a nice sun shining overhead. In fact, we are currently situated in Ewing, New Jersey. The coordinates are exactly where we are in Ewing. And so this is what the sky would look like on a completely cloudless day about a week ago, which is when the simulation is set to. So let's go ahead and let's advance time a little bit so we can really appreciate the night sky in a truly amazing way. So whoops, it's a little fast, but we're going to let the sun slowly set until right around 8:30 p.m. because that's when the sky truly darkens and the amazing night sky objects truly come out and we can witness them. So right now it's around 8:30 p.m. on this day, and we can see a mosaic of objects in the night sky. You have the faint glow of the sun just over the western horizon, and you can see above us as a mosaic of stars and galaxies and all these amazing things. And so this is a lot what the night sky would have looked like to ancient astronomers who looked up and could see all these things. But when we go out on any given night, even in our own homes, we can't see this night sky. We can only see a handful of stars compared to what's up here. The reason for this apparent blindness almost is because of an effect called light pollution. So light pollution is what happens when the light from our ground, all the lights that we turn on the ground, tend to actually mask our night sky because of all that light. And so even though we can see our sky, even though we can see our ground and our surroundings with clarity, we unfortunately darken the night sky by doing so. But to the ancient Greek astronomers, this would not have been a problem. They would have been able to see the night sky with absolute clarity. Pollution, it's all turned off, and all we have to contend with is the atmosphere. So looking up above us, speaking of those ancient astronomers, they often made these patterns and often made these stories in the night sky that reflected their cultures and values and the things they believed in. I'm of course referring to the constellations. So looking up at our night sky, can you see any of these constellations for yourself? You can feel free to shout them out if you do.
Gemini.
Orion.
Gemini.
I'm hearing Orion, Gemini, Big Dipper.
Little Dipper.
Little Dipper
Orion.
also. So a bunch of them are out, and you've actually claimed some pretty correct ones. So over here with my laser pointer, I will also help point some of them out. Over here is Orion. Over here is Taurus, one of the zodiacs. Back here is going to be Cassiopeia, but don't strain your neck looking for it. But up here is the Big Dipper, which you guys have said, which is actually an asterism, a pattern of stars that is part of the Great Bear constellation. Another one up here is just kind of hard to make out, but there's also the Leo constellation. Leo is the lion, which is a pretty popular animal at TCMJ. So we can actually help see these constellations a bit better if we turn on their constellation lines. And so with these lines turned on and their names turned on, we can actually see all of the ones that we may not have been able to make out when in the sky, but that really were very apparent to these ancient astronomers. Of course, these astronomers didn't just look up and connect the dots in the night sky. They actually looked up and they told stories with what they saw. And so this artwork reflects some of the stories and some of the things that they believed in. So for example, Orion was not just a pattern of stars. Orion was a great hunter and one of my favorite constellations. We'll get back to him a bit later. Up here, Leo was often believed to be the Nemean lion that Hercules fought. And over here is Virgo, also one of the zodiacs. And so Virgo's represented a number of different figures in astrological history. She's represented the goddess of justice, the goddess of wheat from Greek mythology. She's even represented as the Virgin Mary to some interpretations. So really, a lot of these figures up here, a lot of these images are so iconic to many different cultures besides our own because of the star patterns that were very, very prominent to many different cultures across our world. And so looking at artwork isn't the only thing that we can do in the planetarium, however, because there are other celestial objects in the night sky that matter to us. These objects are, of course, being the planets. So let me go ahead and turn off this artwork. Let's go ahead and turn on what planets are in our night sky. And so, as you may have realized, not many of the famous ones are up there. In fact, none of the official planets per se are actually up. We have Haumea, Makemake, and Ceres. These objects are not planets, but they're actually dwarf planets. They're among 5 objects, which also include Eris and Pluto, as classified as the dwarf planets because they're not massive enough to actually control their own orbits to be classified as planets, as was determined in 2006. However, they're still extremely interesting objects to study and have a lot of cool information to be learned about them. So using my little cursor, I can actually pan on over to one of these objects so we can really learn more about it. And so the one that I like to go off into the most is going to be Ceres. Now I can slowly, if the remote actually cooperates with me, I'm doing this all by hand, we can actually go on over to Ceres and select it to learn some more information about it. And we can also zoom in on the planet to really get an up close and personal look at it. And so do bear in mind that we are about to move quite a bit when we do this zoom in motion. So now here we are looking at Ceres. Ceres is located about 3.2 astronomical units away from Earth. Now, an astronomical unit is an astronomy term which is defined as the distance between the Earth and the Sun. So this dwarf planet up here is 3 times farther away from Earth than Earth is away from the Sun. And so this is a pretty interesting object, and at first glance it kind of looks like the lunar surface. In reality though, it's actually closer to an asteroid, and it is located within the asteroid belt that is in between Mars and Jupiter. Now this object is the largest of the asteroids, and it is a dwarf planet in its own right. It really is an integral part of its orbit, and if we speed up time a little bit, you can actually see its rotation. And you really see some of the interesting features on its surface, like all of its craters and its potential cryovolcanoes, which are volcanoes that spit ice instead of lava, which are very interesting objects for us to study. So we'll zoom all the way back out to our night sky. And besides the planets, there are a number of other really cool objects that really intrigue astronomers to look at. These are the stars, these are the galaxies, these are the star clusters as well, and these are also the nebula that astronomers want to study and learn more about because they're so important to the way we learn about astronomy, and they are the deep sky objects. And these objects may sound elusive to us, but in fact, they're not that hard to find at all. If I take my cursor, we can actually go to one that you've probably seen before, you just didn't realize it. So over here we're going over to our constellation, that's the wrong button, to our constellation Orion. And so Orion's a really cool constellation for a number of reasons. It's got a really cool star called Betelgeuse in its top left, which is a supernova that will explode. It's got its famous Orion belts, and it's got these 3 objects in the center. What appear to be stars, and you've probably seen these objects before, but in fact these are not stars. But this is an object called Messier 42 and Messier 43, which is better known as the Great Orion Nebula. And so this is the Great Orion Nebula that's actually put into the sky in the correct coordinates that it will be located. And this is a really fascinating object to study for a number of reasons. So up here, all this colored material, all this colored stuff around these stars is going to be gas, molecular gas and dust. What happens is over time, this molecular gas actually collapses under its own weight. And when it does so, it forms these protostars in its center. And as the gas collapses and as these protostars form, they accrete more and more mass until eventually they are born as stars. And so studying this object, it's actually pretty close to us. It's only about 1,000 light years away. And while that sounds pretty large to us, and it is, 1,000 light years really is not that large astronomically speaking, so this is a really close object that we can watch almost in real time. We can watch it form stars. And so objects that are really big and really fascinating like these are really important because they help astronomers learn better how stars like our sun may have been formed. We'll zoom all the way back out here. And there are tons and tons of these deep sky objects for us to discover, and they're not all of them that can actually be seen with the naked eye. If we turn them on, you can see that there are literally thousands of them in the night sky for us to discover. So peeking over this horizon, over here is this thing, it actually says merging galaxies. Using my cursor, I will go on over and find it. And so this is a really cool object for us to study, and I'll explain why. So we're now zoomed into these things called merging galaxies. These merging galaxies, I'll turn off this haze so you can see them a bit clearer, they have technical scientific names, as all galaxies do, but we'll call this one Clyde and this one Ide. So Clyde and Ide are both spiral galaxies. They're galaxies that look very similar to ours with these branched arms, with these bright cores in the center and all these stars and dust. And so Clyde and I are great friends, but they're great friends that got a little too close to each other, physically speaking. So you really want to keep your distance in astronomy, because if you don't, something like this galaxy merger can happen. What's currently happening is these galaxies are attracted to each other in the gravitational sense, and they're being pulled towards each other very quickly. And what will happen is that when they merge, the dust will all begin to mix. Excuse me. And it will form, this dust will really heat up and mix, and all this gas will swirl together, and they'll form new nebulas, which form new stars. And there'll be more star formation occurring in these galaxies. These cores in the centers of the galaxies, these are actually supermassive black holes in the center of the galaxy. What could happen is they could do this thing called activating, and they can become very energetic and very, very bright. And finally, these stars, which we can see in the night sky, will actually start to pass each other in almost this cosmic dance as they pass back and forth across each other until a large elliptical galaxy is formed. Now, this is taking place over millions and millions of years. So my question is, why does this object, which is located 81 million light years away from us, which is quite far, why does this matter? Why does this celestial event matter to us? Well, the reason for that is because it's going to happen to our own galaxy. In just about 4 to 5 billion years, so right down the corner, our galaxy is going to merge with its sister galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy. When these two galaxies merge, it's going to look something like this. And so astronomers want to know what this is going to look like, because we probably won't be around to see it for ourselves, so we want to know and predict what this merger is going to look like. But we can study events that are currently happening in the universe, like this one, to just learn exactly what is going on. And so we'll zoom out of this galaxy, or these galaxies, I should say. We'll look at some of these other really cool objects. So all the way up here is this object that I always like to study on my tours, and they're really, really cool. And it is called V838 Monoceros. So named Monoceros because it is in the unicorn Monoceros unicorn constellation. And so we will zoom all the way in on this, and this is a true behemoth of the night sky. It's something really, really amazing to look at. So what's going on here is we have this galactic dust, all this swirling outflows, all this gas all around this this source. And then here's a very bright red source that is shining, and this is 20,000 light years away from us. So what's going on here? Well, we've all seen the movie Star Wars, so it obviously is a great, great movie. And so in Star Wars, there is this planet Tatooine that Luke Skywalker lives on, and his planet has a binary sunset. Well, this star that's in a binary seems very sci-fi-ish to us, because like 2 stars in a system, that's crazy. But truth be told, in our galaxy, most stars are in binaries. It's actually quite rare for a star to be in a singular orbit like our sun is. Most stars are in binaries or triples or quadruples. And so what happens is when one of these stars also gets a little too close to each other, that's kind of a theme today, they merge and they cause this galactic outburst of energy that is so powerful and drives these gaseous outflows. And so astronomers, we want to study these types of outflows because they're interesting, and also because they tell us a bit about what other star systems look like that are different from our own. Finally, speaking of things that are different from our own, there's one more source within our night sky today that we can look at and get to appreciate a bit about it. So let's go on all the way over to this thing called the Sombrero Galaxy. And it's located right in between Virgo and Corvus, these constellations. And so it's named Messier 104, but it's often nicknamed the Sombrero Galaxy, and you'll see why as soon as we zoom in on it. And so this Sombrero Galaxy, which looks like a galactic pizza and a galactic Mexican hat, is a really fascinating one for astronomers to study, and it's often photographed quite often because of how amazing it is. And you've probably seen it before. You have this ring of dust in the center, this huge bright bulge, and so astronomers want to learn what's going on with this galaxy and why it looks the way it does. And so there's this thing called, we've heard of petting zoos, which we all love to visit, but there's also this thing called the Galaxy Zoo, the Galactic Zoo, which consists of all of the galaxies that exist in the universe, all the diverse set of objects for us to witness and for us to look at, all exist within this universe. And so astronomers, we want to study these different types of galaxies and really get to learn more about them, because that tells us more about how our universe came to be. And so studying objects like this sombrero over here, besides looking at interesting hats, it also tells us more about the way the universe formed. So I can stand up here and I can talk about these deep sky objects all day, and believe me, do I want to, because there's some really cool stuff up here. But we have other things to look at. And we have things to look at that are only things that happen, once in a while. Well, things that you really gotta be there to see, really amazing events. People have seen this know what I'm setting up for. I'm setting up for those meteor showers, those northern lights, and those eclipses that you can only see once in a lifetime that you really want to be there to witness. So a solar eclipse will happen in Ewing in the coming years, but unfortunately we don't have that kind of time to wait. So instead, let's jump to an eclipse that we know has happened and witness it for ourselves. And so we're gonna have to change location a little bit, but that's okay. We can do that in our planetarium. So let's go ahead and let's run these little settings that I have. And I'm going all the way over to this thing called scripts. And so these scripts are little commands that I've written to help me do things a bit faster. And so we're going to run this little script called Total Eclipse, and you can probably see where this is going. And so be sure to brace yourself, because we are about to change our location and our sky in a very dramatic way. So right now we have completely shifted our point of view to now be at a lovely, lovely beach. And this is, in fact, we're currently positioned at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina on August 21st, 2017. This was a fun day for our family because we were actually at Disney World at the time. And we got to witness this event, which hopefully you all got to see a glimpse of in New Jersey as well. And it was called an interesting thing called the Great American Eclipse. And we'll see why in a moment. So as we pan forward time a little bit faster, you notice that the sky begins to darken during this event. But the sun is not setting, in fact. What's going on is this total eclipse. It was called the Great American Eclipse because it is a solar eclipse that took place over much of the continental United States, prominently so at South Carolina. And so as this eclipse happened, you see the sky darkened as the moon passed in front of the sun for a brief instant, and then just like that, the eclipse ends like it never happened. And so these are really cool events to watch because they showcase the really fascinating motion of objects within our solar system and the way really our perspective influences how the sky looks. But this event you can obviously watch on YouTube. You can see it at any point. What's so special about viewing it in here? Well, I'll show you. Let's reset our systems and let's go ahead and do something that I do not recommend doing in real life. Actually, two things I don't recommend doing in real life. First, never, ever, ever look at the sun without protection. Really, in general, do never look at an eclipse, never look at the sun at all, because it can cause permanent blindness. That's not really fun. You can't really look at stars if you're blind. So I do not recommend looking at the sun ever. Another thing that I do not recommend ever doing is turning off the atmosphere. You see, we need the atmosphere to breathe and to sort of live. So it's not really a good thing to be without. But in the planetarium, we can do all these things. We can break all the rules. And so the atmosphere in the planetarium is currently off, and this is what the sky would look like. It would be a fascinating mosaic, just like the night sky, except that there's a bright sun up there. And so to understand eclipses a bit better, we need to do a bit of an x-ray of an eclipse. And to do that, we're going to do a little bit of light geometry. Nothing too bad, I promise. So the way our sky is divided up into is it's divided up into all these imaginary lines that dictate how the night sky works. And one of these important lines is called the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the path that the sun actually lies on, and it's the path that the sun appears to take across the night sky over the course of a year. But of course, we learned in the 1500s or so that in fact it is the path the Earth takes around the sun, not the other way around. And so the ecliptic is somewhat significant in modern astrology because it is the path that the zodiac signs Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, and all the rest lie along. And so it's a pretty important line. It's the line that the sun will always be on. And so occasionally during a new moon phase, the moon will also happen across this line at the same time as the sun. When it does so, we get an eclipse, which is what's happening right now. That was a little too fast. Apologies. One other cool thing that we can do with a planetarium is one other thing that you should never do in real life, and that is this. So we'll go all the way back to around 1:30. We'll turn the atmosphere back on so we can see again. And we're going to take our little cursor, we're going to go all the way up from where our sombrero galaxy was, all the way over. It takes a while. Until we get on over to the sun. We're going to go ahead and zoom all the way in on the sun. So now we have a pretty amazing view of the sun. This eclipse is already starting. So you can see the solar surface with its sunspots and the surface of the sun, which is called the photosphere. And so what happens is, as time progresses, we can actually see the moon eclipse on over the sun. And so this is what is actually going on. The moon is totally covering the sun, and it gets totally dark once this happens. And so these events are really cool to witness. And honestly, astronomy is pretty awesome. In fact, it's pretty awesome to look at even from our home planet of Earth. Because astronomy has always been conducted from Earth for the longest time. Because that's where humans are. We haven't actually been able to leave our planet. Probes haven't been sent out into space, and we haven't done really space exploration until the late 50s, early 60s is when that actually started to take hold. So all of our astronomy, all of our learning had to be done from Earth, which is what we just did earlier. But now with the rise of space exploration and the possible futures that we can have exploring the cosmos as a human society, we now have the ability to preview what our point of views from very different locations are going to look like. And so let's go ahead and let's witness one of these locations together. So let's go ahead and run another script and change our location once again in a very dramatic way. And right now I'm running a little script that I also wrote called Neverland. We will see why. So now we ran the script called Neverland, and we're currently on the moon of Pan, hence Neverland, but it's actually named after a Greek satyr god. And so right now we are very clearly not on Earth. We are on a moon orbiting Saturn's rings. It's a small walnut-shaped moon in the outer ring of Saturn. And so we have a very spectacular view of this gaseous giant and of the solar system. And so we can turn on the planets within the solar system, and we can see that it's a very different mosaic of objects. We can see its moons are all around Saturn, and we can see over by the sun are the inner planets that we looked at earlier. Jupiter, Mars, Ceres all appear to be much closer to the sun because our point of view is much farther away. And so when it comes down to point of view, we can go on over to a little object that we know about. Very slowly but surely. We can zoom all the way into our tiny little pale dot and its moon, which is our home planet of Earth. We're currently situated about 10 astronomical units away from our home planet, 10.5 astronomical units. So we are 10.5 times farther away from our home planet right now on this moon of Pan than Earth is away from the sun. So the solar system is huge, very huge. But regardless of how huge our solar system is, a lot of people might say, well, will the positions of the stars actually change because we've traveled so far? So won't the stars appear to move slightly in their positions? Well, in fact, they haven't. The star positions are very much in the same location, and this really also has to do with the way the galaxies behaved earlier. The constellation positions haven't moved because stars are extremely far apart from each other. When the galaxies collided earlier that we were talking about, the reason none of the stars will actually collide when this happens, but they'll sort of just pass each other, is because these galaxies are huge and these distances in between stars are much larger than even the distances within our solar system. So we really don't have to worry about this sort of shift happening. But this whole difference here, this dynamic we set, really illustrates how distance is a fundamental concept to astronomy. Distance is everything in astronomy because it determines how bright something is, what something looks like from a certain point of view. And so really that's a huge part of astronomy, and our little exercise with traveling quite a bit has really shown us what distance and what point of view truly means to an astronomer. And finally, speaking of point of view, we will run one last little script for us to really witness another point of view. So let's go ahead and let's reset our planetarium to its default configuration. We're back in Ewing on a beautiful night sky. We'll turn the planets to see again that it's just the dwarf planets that are up in the sky. But we'll go ahead and shift our perspective once more in this little script I wrote called Flight. And you can probably see where this one's going as well. I'm kind of predictable. And so we've currently changed our point of view very quickly, and we are now flying away from our home planet of Earth. You can see the moon and all the planets appear to move relative to our changing position from our planet. We're now in upper Earth orbit, just around 0.0007 astronomical units, or around 1,000th of the distance between us and the sun. And as you can see, our point of view is really interesting from up here because it's our tiny home planet, and it looks quite majestic among the backdrop of the stars of the Milky Way galaxy, which you can actually see right along this band, and it is a truly majestic sight. But at the same time, when you turn on all these deep sky objects, you turn on the planets, you turn on the stars, and you turn on all the constellations that are in the sky, to an astronomer, you can almost feel overwhelmed at times with just how large and how massive and expansive our universe is. how is our home planet, how are we supposed to compete with all that? What if someone right now is looking down at us wondering, why haven't they figured out that there are aliens yet? Or, they're looking at us wondering if there's even life on our planet. And so what I'm really getting at here is that the universe is huge and mysterious, but it is also big and beautiful to look at as well. I mean, there are so many amazing wonders for us to witness within our night sky. There's so much possibility to outer space, which is really why it's such a fascinating field, because of how much there is that we don't know and how much there is for us to learn. But turning all that off, getting away from all that philosophy here, we have just our Earth sitting within its night sky. And so the Earth, honestly, our night sky, is unfortunately under sort of, an inability to see. Because with light pollution and with the rise of all the lights that we have here on Earth, it becomes harder and harder for us to appreciate on a daily basis the night sky the way the ancient astronomers had. And so obviously light pollution isn't something that's going to change on a large scale, because humans need to see. We don't like walking into our cars or bumping into things in the middle of the night, so we want to see. But it doesn't change the fact that astronomy is still amazing and is something that we still want to appreciate, which is why going to see things like planetarium shows, like going to observatories to witness the night sky and just staring up at night, going to a remote location and just staring up at the night sky and waiting for more and more of those stars to become visible to your eyes is so important. Because astronomy is fundamental to the human culture. The stars above us are fundamental to who we are as humans. By taking the time to study our night sky and by going to planetariums, which is really our gateway to our galaxy, it really does help us learn more about our place in the universe. So if you can take one thing away from this show, it is this, is that the universe is big, mysterious, and beautiful, and that I always wish you all happy stargazing and happy Mother's Day.